Now, health costs can be extremely unpredictable, but the right cover can make all the difference. When life throws a little bit of a medical surprise your way, still for many South Africans, choosing between medical aid, hospital plans, or health insurance can be a little bit confusing. And sitting with an advisor tends to be a little bit overwhelming. So tonight on Community Finances, we'll break it down. How to approach a medical advisor with confidence, what questions you must ask before signing anything, and how to make sure you're paying what you really need. Not what it sounds like on the paper, the fancy terms that you might miss. Because when it comes to your health and your wallet, clarity can save you far more than money, and it can save you stress. So of course, joining us is none other than our two every week consistent guests, but has become more of co-host on this segment, Brother Muhammad Jaffer from Mojaf Financial Services, Brother Abdurrauf Hanslow. Gentlemen, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum
salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
And it's always a pleasure to be in studio. Alhamdulillah.
I so badly wish that at some point in the future, Brother Abdurrauf will join us if he comes down. Our listeners have become very dependent on these segments, alhamdulillah. So I think it's good for us to continue having these.
Inshallah, maybe sooner than later.
Ameen. We make dua.
We make big groot dua for that.
Non-stop.
Inshallah.
Ameen. So, Mojaf, of course, a lot of people were asking for the medical aid conversation. So this is why, the team, you guys decided to have this conversation rather. Why is it important for us to speak to an advisor before going for big medical aid plans or medical services before we do that?
Okay, so Mikhail, this is obviously a very important and a very costly discussion, because just to give you an idea, to have a simple procedure done today can set you back 10,000, 100,000,
wow,
or hundreds of thousands of rands. For instance, bypasses, heart bypasses, and these are very, very expensive. Open heart surgery, it's a very, very expensive operation. And the cost can literally, I've seen bills running up to 1.7 million rand, almost 2 million rand. I've seen bills of 100,000, 220, 30,000 just for an overnight procedure.
Wow.
So it's big cost. So back in the day, I'm talking now the 80s and the 90s, we had what we call the medical aid.
Yes.
And that was a medical aid. You get a card. You go to the doctor swipes the card, you don't have to worry about anything. Yeah. Hospital is covered, doctors is covered. But what happened back then is that medical aids were going bust like as if it's a fashion to do that. And the reason for that was that medical costs, because of medical aids, providers, unfortunately, you know what happens when things are just as easy to swipe and that. A lot of fraud crept in, and medical expenses just ran away from the medical aids.
Wow.
So you would typically, I can remember in the 80s and in the 90s, it was common for medical aids sometimes to go up twice a year.
Whoa.
Then halfway through the year, you'll hear we're changing medical aid because this medical aid is going bust. So this was happening quite often. So then the medical council, in up to 1999, if you were sickly or your parents were sickly, the medical aid those years could say, Mikhail, nou ons wil jou maai nie. They could turn people down.
Wow.
So come 1999, the medical aids then, I'm giving a background as to where we are, and then we'll go into different points. Of course. Yeah. So then what the medical council then did is say, okay, this is obviously not right, because what the medical aids were doing at the time, they were then taking their healthy lives, and those that were sickly and needs it, they were turned down.
Yeah.
So they then came out with a ruling, and these are the important rulings that I would encourage our listeners to make note of. The one is that you can literally be 1 foot in the grave. Medical aids can't turn you down. They have to take you as a member. All right. So now I'm going to distinguish between, back then you used to get the medical aid. Today we call medical aid is more like a hospital plan. Now some people misunderstand when some of the stuff is just paid, like they go to the doctor, the GP, they go to the pharmacy, it's paid, but my medical aid is paying for. That is when you add the medical savings account.
Yes.
And I'm going to explain that as well.
Okay.
All right. So now what they then said is that yes, you have to belong to a, let's call it what it is termed today, hospital plan.
Yeah.
Now, if I call it medical aid, I'm referring to hospital plan.
Okay.
So they have to take you on, no matter how old you are, how sickly you are. They have to take you on as a member.
Okay.
That's number one. The second thing that they can do is if you've got any preconditions. Now, as you know, blood pressure, diabetes is very, very common in our society.
Yes, unfortunately.
So if you've got any of those conditions, plus any other, there's many other conditions.
Yeah.
But any preconditions, you'll have a 12-month waiting period for that condition. Now, let me explain that. Say, for instance, let's use something like hypertension.
Yeah.
Hypertension, it's obviously it will affect your heart, it will affect your blood pressure. It's So what the medical aid would typically state that you, for 12 months, when it comes to hypertension and related conditions, are excluded.
Okay.
So, say for instance, now you've got hypertension. Allah forbids, now in that 12 months, you get a heart attack.
Oh.
So that would form part of that related conditions.
Okay.
Now, for argument's sake, now they say they give you a 12-month waiting period for hypertension, and sadly, you get cancer. The two is unrelated. So you'll be covered then for that. All right, I just want to use that as an example. So that is preconditions. So 12-month waiting period for preconditions. Then they have another blanket one that for the first 3 months, you have a general waiting period, meaning no planned procedures can be done within the first 3 months. In the case of many medical aids, in the case of an accident or any of the prescribed minimum benefits, the term that they normally use is PMBs. If any of those things happen in the case of emergency and it's not one of your preconditions, in most medical aids you will be covered.
Okay.
All right. So I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible. Now, another thing that a lot of people battle to understand, and that is, but I'm now going to change. I'm not happy with this medical aid. I want to move from this medical aid to another medical aid. If you move from one medical aid to another medical aid without a break-in of more than 90 days, meaning 3 months, the worst they can do is to give you a 3-month general waiting period. Your 12 months preconditions doesn't come in.
Okay.
Because you've already gone through that. But you must have been on the previous medical aid for more than 24 months, meaning 2 years.
Okay.
All right. I hope
So there must be no break-in cover also.
No break-in cover, and you must have been on the previous medical aid for at least 2 years.
Okay.
24 months.
If there was a break-in cover, let's for argument's sake say there was a break-in cover, does that 12-month waiting period then re-begin?
If the break was more than 3 months, 90 days, yes, then your 12 months waiting period for that precondition starts all over again.
Ouch.
Exactly, yes, yeah.
Ouch. Just ouch.
So, yeah, so I just wanted to give people the overarching approach when it comes to hospital plans.
Yeah.
All right, now, let's talk about the different types of plans that you've got. So medical aid typically, so these are the things that I think we need to ask, not I think, but say if you're going to see your advisor, these are the things that you need to ask, all right? What type of cover do you want? Firstly, is it today, they call it medical aid, but medical aid is basically, it's a comprehensive plan which has got the added benefit is like your medical savings cover, medical savings account, which is maybe a comprehensive cover, which is it covers quite a few conditions, and also obviously the premium is accordingly. All right. So your savings account is quite high, your day-to-day cover and things like that. So
Yes.
that typically they call medical aid, but it comes with restrictions, with limits, and all those type of things.
Yeah.
Then you have what we call a hospital plan, and that the vast majority of people have as a hospital plan.
Yeah.
All right. So that will cover you typically when you are in hospital.
Okay.
All right. We'll come to chronics and things like that. We'll come to that
Yes,
later
yes.
on. Then there is what they call health insurance.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, many times people would say, but I can get medical aid or hospital cover for 350 or 450 rand. It can never be that. It is a hospital insurance. So a hospital insurance only pays a fixed amount for certain conditions. So they're not going to pay you for, if you have to, love forbid, you end up in hospital for a couple of days or weeks, they're not going to pay the full bill for that. They're going to pay you maybe 5,000 rands for hospital cover, which today is maybe not even going to cover you for one day.
Yeah.
So
Definitely not.
just make sure that you understand the difference between a comprehensive. I don't want to use the word actually hospital medical aid because
It's scheme actually. A medical scheme I think would be the better option.
let's call it comprehensive cover
Okay.
for the hospital plan, and then we call it a hospital plan,
Yeah.
and then health insurance.
Okay.
All right, Abdurrauf, if you want to add anything there, Abdurrauf?
Yes, Muhammad. You know, in community finance, we say prevention is better than cure
Yes.
because the cure is probably not covered.
That's a good one. I like
in
that.
saying that, we come from South Africa, and we know what our medical system, our public medical system, is all about in South Africa. And we wouldn't want to wish that upon anyone, basically, to go and experience the healthcare sector in the public service. And therefore, this types of conversation is so vitally important. And the three sectors that Mohammed mentioned, the medical aid, the hospital plan, and the medical insurance, health insurance, is basically three things that you need to understand before you invest in any one of them. I'll give you an example, Mikhail, of how things have changed over time. 8 years ago, myself and my family, we moved to Doha. And in doing so, we cancelled our medical aid in South Africa. And in cancelling the medical aid in South Africa, we were on a tradition, what we called that time as a traditional medical aid.
Yeah.
So this is a medical aid scheme that basically gave us sectoral funding for various different options, various different treatments through the year. That would be our optical, our dental, our
Yes, of
GP
course.
visits, our pharmaceutical, whatever. And in recent years, we've now been trying to explore getting back onto a medical aid because ultimately we have to return to South Africa one day. So in trying to find a traditional medical aid that we were on 8 years ago and looking for it today is very, very difficult.
You
Because
can't get it,
probably
yeah.
one or two options, but it's not the traditional medical aid of those years. And obviously, it was a solvency issue on the medical scheme side, as Mohammed said, that forced them into looking at various different options of staying solvent in that regard. And in the broader spectrum of things have changed.
Very much.
But, it's still a necessary evil. At the end of the day, pricing of doctors and specialists have gone far beyond what medical aids pay. And that's where Mohammed will speak about something as well that also covers that type of things. Because many of the doctors that we consult today, I'd go as far as to say 70% to 80% of the doctors we consult today, specialists, are far above medical aid rates.
Yeah.
In doing financial planning, there's certain things that can be taken into account to safeguard against those unforeseen circumstances and expenses.
Most definitely. And I can say this, and again, I don't want to make you gentlemen feel old, but I've been on medical aid my entire life. 25 years of my life, I've been on medical aid, alhamdulillah. So my parents obviously got medical aid, before I was born. And at that time, it was exactly that. It's just one medic. There's no plan name, nothing like that. To different. It's just this is your medical aid. You go to the hospital. You can go to the GP. If you need to go to the pharmacy, you can use the card. You swipe it. You get your stuff, and on your way. And every month you pay that. And you normally it would be through the employer that you're working for, right? And then obviously when I started working in corporate, the company I work for made it obligatory for us to be on their medical aid of choice with their partner. And at 18 years old, I had to leave my father's medical aid. You have till 21, right? You have till 21, of course. But at 18 years old, and if you're a student, I think you can also stay a little bit longer on. We'll talk about that again.
Correct.
But at 18, I left and I now got my own medical aid. And I was on that medical aid from then till now. I'm still on that medical aid, but I can tell you, it's not medical aid. It's not. It's a scheme. It's exactly what it is. It's in the name. It's in front of us. It's a scheme. And simply, it's good to have if you're someone that is sickly. But it's a necessity to have if you're not sickly. I've only been to hospital in the last 6 years.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah, twice. In the last 6 years, alhamdulillah, I've only been to hospital twice. In hospital to stay overnight or for surgery or anything. So I can tell you, it was good to have. Personally, to be able to go to one of the local private hospitals, I was seen within 15 minutes, and I was, checked into a bed and everything. We are here from some of the communities and some other family members that don't have any sort of medical or hospital plans. They're waiting sometimes 3 to 4 hours for an ambulance.
Yeah.
And so,
Very sad.
it's like I said, it's not something that you can't have anymore. It's important to have it just for those moments of necessity, and it's unfortunate, but there are cheaper options. Don't be fooled into believing that you have to take the one that someone is giving to you. There are so many options, and that's why this show exists. And that's why, like we said, like Abdurrauf said, I liked what he said so much. And also, of course, Brother Muhammad, we have to have the conversations beforehand. So, Muhammad, you obviously want to continue the conversation on what we should move forward with.
Mikhail, you touch on something that's very sensitive. I can remember many years ago, maybe 10, 15 years ago, a friend of mine's son developed kidney problems, and his father passed on, and obviously they couldn't afford medical aid or hospital plan. And he was in one of the public institutions. And when I went there, ya Allah, it's enough to make you more sick and depressed. No. His family, he had to phone me to bring blankets, and the family must bring food. Yeah. Now when you're sickly, you want to be in a warm, comfortable environment and not worried about these things. But unfortunately, this is what the situation is. The other thing is if you don't have a hospital plan and you go on to attend to these private hospitals, the first thing that the last time I checked, the first thing they're going to ask you must put 30,000 down. No. Who's got that kind of money? Very, very few people. So it's very important that, as Abdurrauf said, it's a crutch purchase.
Muhammad, that 30,000 is just for the hospital. So if it's ICU, it's 10 times more.
Yeah.
And we know of someone that just needs a spinal fusion at the moment. And the spinal fusion, it's just two vertebrae that needs to be fused together. It's not a big operation. But the hospital cost alone for that is 200,000 rand.
Here we go.
You mentioned 30,000. I can tell you, it's the 30,000 is not even to stay in hospital. That's just for the trauma. And I'll tell you why. I had one of my children I rushed him to hospital a few weeks ago, and the bill I got just for them dealing with her in trauma before admitting her was 30,000 rand.
Allahu Akbar.
Luckily, of course, medical aid covered it. But can you imagine? You're going to a hospital, any of the pristine private hospitals within. We've spoiled for choice actually here in Cape Town. In Cape Town, we are spoiled for choice with private hospitals. Okay. You go to any one of them, you're going to pay between 15 to 20,000 rand upfront. If you don't have medical aid, it's going to be 30,000. If you have medical aid and depending on your plan, you might have to pay a co-payment. At one point, I was on a type of plan that had a co-payment, and I think I had to pay 7,000 rand up front at the trauma unit for them to even see my child. Because it was my child, I paid it. But that made me change my plan the following year. So, of course, they are...
So many times we hear complaints about people tell us, what, our cover is so expensive, this, that, and the other. And do you know that South African medical fraternity is rated amongst one of the best in the world? That there are people that come from the UK, America, Australia, New Zealand, all these other countries come to South Africa for a holiday to have procedures done.
Yes, I've
Because
seen that.
they have like something. That's why there's such a big uproar about this NHI. We inshallah we'll have a separate discussion for
Inshallah,
that.
inshallah.
But there's a big uproar, and I fully understand why. Like in the UK, you need to go on a waiting list. You can't just go see any doctor. You need to go from your GP. Your GP must then refer you.
Yeah.
And even with the dentist, by the time you get to the dentist, the pain has already killed you, you know.
course.
But many of these people come to South Africa because for them it's cheap to come here for the treatment. But that again is another discussion. So we must, yes, it is expensive for us, but make sure that you've got a plan that at least will cover you to an extent for your procedures that you come in. We're going to come to the questions about why don't they pay for that, they exclude this, why do
Yes.
they don't pay, why is there limits for that?
That's
We will-
interesting.
Sorry,
I have to break your word, Mo Jeff, but one of the listeners actually asked a question around medical insurance. But to the other listener that asked the question now about the hospital plan, excluding many things, you heard now Brother Muhammad said we will cover that. So we won't answer that question right now,
Yeah, we
but
can-
over the course of the next few minutes, maybe over the next few weeks, we'll definitely cover that question. So don't worry, we've locked it in. We've got it in our list of things to address, of course. But the question from the other listener from earlier on, Muhammad and Abdurrauf, was, what do you do if you want to move from a medical insurance or to a medical aid? Or to a medical hospital plan, essentially.
Okay, so maybe I'll deal with that now before
Okay.
we go on. But the other question, you're quite right, we're going to
We'll
cover.
cover,
We will
inshallah.
definitely cover. Okay, so a medical insurance is not deemed as a medical aid.
Okay.
So which means, oh yes, the other thing that I didn't mention, that if you up to the age of 35, if you haven't been on the medical, no problem, no loadings, you can go onto the medical aid.
Okay.
If you after the age of 35, there's a scale that they use. So if
Okay.
you haven't been on the medical aid for 1 to 4 years, they will load your premium by 5%.
Wow.
Okay. From 4 to 12 years, they will load your premium with 25%. Then from 15 to 25, they will load your premium by 50%.
Yeah,
This is if you
wow.
haven't been for so many years. And then over that, it's 75% loading. Now, why do they do that? Human nature, I'm not ek is jonk, ek is not niks verkeerd vir my nie. I'm not going to worry with hospital plan. So you then join the medical aid or the hospital plan when you are sickly and when you need it. So you're coming with your sicknesses and you're expecting the medical aid to pay. So what they are saying now, if you're going to come when you are already sickly, we're going to load your premium. And that loading stays with you for the rest of your life.
So get in early.
So
Be smart.
Correct, yes, yeah.
Mohammed, if I can,
Sorry, yeah, come in.
sorry, Mohammed. If I can also just add, I think that listener was referring to transferring from a medical insurance
Yeah, no,
Yes.
I'm gonna
to a medical aid
yeah,
or hospital
I'm
plan.
gonna get there.
Oh,
Sorry,
okay,
sorry.
okay.
So I'm gonna get there. I just wanted to explain firstly
the
the
percentages,
correct, the loading for why it is important
Okay.
getting onto medical aids, a hospital plan earlier. So a medical insurance is not deemed as a medical aid or hospital plan.
Yeah.
So if you've been on a medical insurance up to the age of 40, you're going to have loadings because it's not deemed as a hospital plan. or-
Loadings and waiting periods.
Correct.
Ouch.
So I just want to make it out clear. So the earlier you get, if you're on a medical insurance, it's what it is. It's a medical insurance. They pay a certain amount, and they are not allowed to pay the provider. They will pay you,
Yeah.
and you need to then settle the providers. I hope that answers the question. All right, can we move on then? Abdurrauf, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add.
If I can just add
Yeah.
add something on there, Mohammed. The medical aid and the hospital plan is obviously managed under regulations, and that regulation is the Medical Schemes Act, whereby the medical insurance is obviously managed under something totally different. and that's the long-term or short-term or long-term insurance act.
Yeah.
Basically. So it's two different types of regulation. So, Mohammed, for clarity purposes, I think when one transfers from one insurance to a medical aid, basically it's regarded, like you said, it's regarded that you're not on medical aid, therefore you'd be regarded as a new member going into the medical aid. Correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. Yes, yes. So you'll be deemed then, say for instance, if you've been on a medical insurance, and you now move to a medical aid, as we call a hospital plan, you'll be deemed as if you've never had a hospital plan. So those preconditions, those waiting periods, the loadings, all those things will be you'll be subject to that.
Okay.
All right. So now the next question that we need to ask is, what are the monthly premiums and how do they increase each year and why? Now, like as we know, everything in life goes up. This year we're paying so much for school fees. Next year it's going to be more. This year we're paying so much for butter. Next year we're paying because that is inflation. Inflation is like a cancer. It keeps eating at things. So. Medical insurance, medical aid must also, so there is a difference, Mikhail, between medical inflation and what we call headline inflation. Headline inflation is the general inflation, taking a basket of different items and they will tell you, okay, the inflation is 4%. But medical insurance over the years has always been much higher than headline inflation. Give you an example.
Wow.
There are medical aids companies. I'm not going to mention names. Now, people normally go for the popular ones, and we know that generally the increases over the last 3 years have been around 10% for the vast majority of the big medical aids. But there are medical aids that are really watching their cost that have had increases of less than 5%. So over a 3-year period, you can see the gap between the two medical aids is just widening. The one going up by 10% basically double the amount of the other one. So obviously, the one medical aids increases will then run away. So these are important things that you need to look at as different options, because now some people say, why does the one medical aid cover this and the other medical aid doesn't cover that, and it's got a limit here and a limit? Because they manage the risk pool very well. I'll give you another example. You end up in hospital. Today, unfortunately, medical hospitals, medical fraternity is run like a business. So now you get in hospital, you get charged for, if they open up a pack of swabs, they charge you for the whole pack. So if the medical aid is just going to pay without checking the bill and making sure, why you went for a, I'm just using an example, you went in for a tonsillectomy for your tonsils, but there was an X-ray charge for your foot. Two is unrelated. So I'm just using it an extreme example, but you get there are medical administrators that will make sure they will go through the bill with a fine comb to make sure that you as a member is not charged for unnecessary things. Now people again interpret that, my medical aid is very sticky to pay and they don't want to pay for this, that. They are indirectly or directly protecting you, so that your increases on your medical premium doesn't run away from you. So people need to take note of these things.
Yes.
That yes, cost goes up, medical, and also the other thing is Mikhail, in the past, if you give a typical example, if you had to go in for a hernia op, you need to go in for they had to cut you. A couple of years ago, they had to cut you, and you had to lay still for a couple of days, and the healing process was much longer. Today, what they do is they do these what is it called?
Keyhole surgery.
Keyhole surgery. There we go.
Yes.
So they make 3 holes and they actually work through those 3 holes.
Yes.
And it's a lot of robotics that they use. And 2 days later, you can walk.
Yep.
So but then what happens is that the cost goes up
Of course.
because of the robotics that they use and all these things.
State-of-the-art technology.
So correct. Hence the reason why medical insurance generally goes up much faster than headline inflation. Abdurrahman, anything from your side?
Yes, I think you touched on something very scary, Mohammed, because I have in front of me just the figures of how medical insurances on average, medical aids on average increased from 2024 to 2025. A basic full plan medical aid, basically giving you cover that's in hospital and out of hospital, on average went up between 9 and 12.8%.
Wow.
From 2024 to 2025. Your hospital plans went up by 10.5%.
Whoa.
So that's just an indication. I mean, inflation is where are we sitting on inflation at the moment in South Africa?
The official one is just below 4%.
4%, yeah.
Just below 4%.
Yeah,
so you're looking at about 8% above. Looking at 8% above inflation.
Yeah.
That medical aid scheme. So I mean, it increases the cost of living, definitely. So
that's so important.
But like you said, Mohammed, it also depends on the name. It also depends on the name of the medical scheme. There's credence to it. People, some companies feel that they have
the monopoly,
the monopoly, and they can basically go further.
100%. We're not going to mention names.
Yeah, of course,
of course not.
It's branding, of course.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. So okay. So I think people must understand that will happen.
Yeah.
All right. Then the question, we've got about 15 questions that we're going to, it looks like the time is running. It looks like we're only going to get to about 3 or 4.
And we
but
have.
I think we'd rather take our time and make sure people understand.
100%.
You know? So the next thing is, what benefits are included and what are the annual limits, and why is it so important that we ask these things? So, there are different plans. So firstly, you'll have a plan that would have you need to belong to a network of doctors, and you are only limited to go to certain hospitals. And that again is going to depend on which option, like the word that you said earlier on, Mikhail, that there are different options. So the company A will have 3 or 4 options. So the bottom one is like what we would call the capitation, which you must earn a certain salary bracket to have that, and it will cover you for these things, certain hospitals that you can go. These are the limits that they will pay. So that's what we call a capitation product. All right. And then they will include, some plans will have caps on, for instance, radiology, dentistry, or specialists. And you need to know and understand why the limits and what the limits are, and there are annual limits. And why are there annual limits, Mikhail? It's because the scheme needs to protect itself and its members. Imagine they've got limitless cover for certain things. What's going to happen? The premiums are going to go up. Yeah. Abdurrahman just said between 8 and 12%. There are, I can tell you now, there are reputable hospital plans that for the last 3 years had 4.8, 4.9, 5% increases. And these are reputable. But because people generally just know of the big names, they then stick to those names, and then you get your 10 and 12% increases. So the important thing is shop around and make sure that you ask the relevant questions. And the increases is basically, and why the limits is so that the fund can protect itself and the members, and not have, like, for instance, people get upset. I'm going in for a stomach cramp, but then all of a sudden the doctor wants to do an MRI. Yeah. So, and we understand the business case behind this, So make sure that some medical aids will say, no, why must we? You're going in for a stomach problem, but they want to do an MRI of your head.
Why?
Why?
Yeah.
Now, some medical aids, and they don't, and that is the other thing that people need to understand. Sometimes the medical aid will decline it, but they will pay it from your medical savings account. So it comes from your savings account and not the medical aid or the hospital plan, the risk cover that's paying it. And these are also things that some people don't understand. So make sure that if your medical aid is sticky about something, try to understand why are they sticky about not paying for certain things. Or they want to, I've had a case actually, Mikael, where first time around when they ask for get a pre-auth, we call it a pre-authorization before you go into hospital, they declined it. So he came to me and I said to him, let the specialist then give a motivation of why you need this operation. So we submitted that, they declined it again. Because they said, the way the doctor wrote it, the justification was almost like it was for cosmetic purposes. So we went back to the specialist and said, listen, comes across as cosmetic. What is the medical reason and why is it that this person needs to go for this procedure? And he then highlighted the medical conditions and why. And they approved the authorization. And those are the medical aids that normally won't have these high increases because they are thorough with the underwriting and the approvals. Those medical aids that just approve, which is also comfortable for us, but then we're going to have to pay for that as well. So just be careful about these things, Mikael, that
of course.
We're going to pay for what we get.
Of course.
And you don't have to pay excessive by getting a good cover also.
Yes, of course.
But so expect that there's going to be limits to what you can cover, and there are covers that will say you can go to any hospital, and they are saying no, you must go to a network. The other thing is also, Mikael, that inland Johannesburg and inland Kimberley and those places, listeners will be surprised that you actually pay more for inland cover than for coastal cover, because the air and so these are the nuances and the different aspects of hospital plan or medical aid that we need to understand. Abdurauf.
I think I don't know how much time we have left, but I'd just like to say
8
a good
minutes.
financial plan, Mohammed and Mikael, obviously must include medical cover. A great one includes a gym that you actually go to. So there again, prevention is better than cure. So in all auspices, I mean, no matter how we look at this, medical aid is an expense. And how we manage this going forward is only through advice and sound advice with a financial advisor. So as we always say, as I think we say it every week, and I think we sound like stuck records, when it comes to financial planning, medical cover is a vital part of that as well. So when looking at the holistic finances of any individual and planning ahead, this section of financial planning is a vital part and a vital component of that financial plan.
Most definitely.
Okay, so we'll move on to the next question that and I touched on it very briefly, and that is which hospitals and doctors are covered? What we call, quite often the term that they would, is this a network option? So why ask that? Because, many plans restrict you to a specific network. So there will be a certain network of hospitals. Again, I don't want to use names. There are certain network of hospitals, and that plan will say you can only go to those networks because what that medical aid or hospital, medical aid company or administrator does, it goes to A, B, C, and D and negotiate rates. And obviously that is to keep costs low.
Yeah.
So that's why they will only allow you to go to those network hospitals. And then always keep informed if your preferred hospital and doctors are included. Otherwise, you might face large co-payments. All right. So what some these what we call the capitation or the network option plans would do is say, okay, we will cover you up to a certain rate. And this is the other thing is, and I think Mikhail, right at the beginning, you touched on it. Say, for instance, and I think Abdurauf also touched on it. Now, the hospital plan, your hospital plan, for arguments, pays up to 100% of medical aid rates. All right.
Yeah.
Now, the procedure, the medical aid for a procedure, say, is 1,000 rands. That doctor charges 2,000 rands. That medical aid or hospital plan is only going to pay 1,000 rands.
Yes.
You have to pay the balance, the other 1,000 rands.
Yeah.
So either it's going to be paid from your medical savings account or something that is now on the market for a number of years, which is called gap cover. We'll talk about that on another, after this, we've covered this, we will do gap cover. But that is what you have to look out for. Now, most specialists, because of there's a shortage of specialists in South Africa, the vast majority of specialists will charge 300, 500. I have even seen, Mikhail, a bill of 700% of medical aid rates. And most gap cover, most gap covers will pay up to 500. Even then, you'll still have a co-payment. So again, make sure, and also I always tell our clients, when you go into hospital, explain to your doctor, look, this is what I've got. This is what I've got. I can't afford anything else. So whoever's going to work on me, if they can come in within medical aid rates, most won't, but do your negotiations up front, because to try and negotiate afterwards is very difficult. So make sure that you understand what your medical aid is going to. In fact, you get certain doctors that will give you a quote. You can then send that quote to your doctor, to your medical aid, and get a feel of what your co-payment is going to be.
Yes.
So it's very, very important that you make sure that you understand. Now, there are co-payments for certain. Let's Mikhail, you must go in for a gastroscopy.
Yes.
All right. Now, they will tell you, the medical aid will tell you, okay, for that, we will pay 5,000. But the bill comes to 7,000. Your co-payment is going to be the 2,000. So these are things that you need to make sure that you understand. And I know it can be very overwhelming. So make sure that in cases like that, your advisor is skilled enough to help and guide you. Through these things and help, because it can be a very traumatic, you're not well, you're sick, and now you end up, when people see the hospital bill, they get even sick again,
yes.
because of what they see. So make sure that the bill is not going to put you back into hospital.
Of course.
So go in prepared, and also, many a times people only focus on the cost. How much am I going to pay? But that's a cheaper option. Why don't we go for that? You're going to get what you pay for. And,
yes.
and I'm not saying you must necessarily pay high cost and very expensive things, but just be careful that you might have to pay a little bit more and get a better plan with a different company, or go onto a different option and you might get those things covered. Particularly, yes. Mikhail, we know cancer today is almost like a flu.
Yeah.
People go, it's so common, And also now we've got the third and the fourth generation drugs.
Yeah.
These highly biotech drugs that can do all sorts of amazing things. But these things are very, very, very costly. So you'll find that maybe the bottom end hospital plan won't pay that, then you must maybe have to go up a notch or two to be able to get that covered.
Yeah.
But that's going to cost you again. So just make sure that you understand those type of things.
Yes, no, most definitely. We have 1 minute left. So Abdurauf, in closing, what would you like to say about this?
Medical aid is that one bill you pay hoping you'll never get your money's worth at the end of the day. So whatever you pay, and no matter how much cover you have, That's the one time that you're paying for something where you don't want to use all the benefits available to you.
Yes.
I think that's my closing statement for this
Now,
evening.
all I want to say to people is when you look at the hospital plans, don't take emotional decisions. Take a decision based on, firstly, on what you can afford and what the plan can offer.
Yes.
And it doesn't mean that if it's a brand that is well known out there, that's the best plan. And also distinguish between a plan, a hospital plan, and you get a lot of these loyalty schemes.
Yeah.
And that is all part, people suck you into their ecosystem.
Exactly.
So make sure that if you want a good medical hospital plan, that's your focus and not the loyalty program per se.
Yes.
I'm not going to mention names, but please make sure that you go in for what you want.
Yes.
And there are good plans around that is affordable.
Now, we have run out of time, unfortunately. To the listeners that are asking questions, inshallah, I will send that to Brother Muhammad and Brother Abdul Rauf, and then we can build next week's conversation around your questions. And of course, if you'd like the contact details for Brother Muhammad Jaffa, you can reach out as well. We'll send it